Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is September 17th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast is Town Hall Showdown, Trump versus Biden, Part 2. We had the first part earlier in the week following President Trump's town hall event hosted by ABC News and George Stephanopoulos. This evening was Vice President Joe Biden's turn. That was on CNN, hosted by Anderson Cooper. And as I stated the other evening with respect to the president, there was no major gaffe. There was no major derailment to his campaign. Same thing this evening with Joe Biden. Joe Biden was Joe Biden. There was no major gaffe that it was going to derail his campaign. That, to me, is to be expected. But you have on one side, you have the Trump campaign creating this caricature of Joe Biden. Of course, there's tidbits of truth in it, of him being obviously an old man, bumbling, stumbling, doesn't know where he is type of guy, doesn't know what he's talking about, doesn't know where he is. So the Trump campaign, by creating this image of Joe Biden, may prove effective, but it also creates a very low bar for Joe Biden to just step over come the first debate on September 29th, hosted by Chris Wallace of Fox News. And at the same time, because you set an extremely low bar for Joe Biden, you're creating a higher bar to jump over for the president. So the president has to hope that Joe Biden plays into that image that he and his campaign are trying to create. Because if Joe Biden can manage to keep it cool, keep himself calm and collected, and not make too many gaffes, because there's going to be gaffes by both of them, then he is not going to fit that mold. He is not going to fall into that bucket that Trump and his campaign are hoping that he falls into. And that can very easily send a message to voters that, okay, that's all I needed to see. Biden can hold his own against Trump, attacking him, saying what he's saying, doing what he's doing. That's all I needed to see and hear. Sounded presidential, looked presidential for the time being. I don't like Trump. I'm going to give Biden a shot. Because they saw what they saw what they needed to see, what they wanted to see, what they wanted to hear. They can go to early voting, and that's it, even though there's still going to be two other debates. And that's what I said. So this first debate is very important, which is why I, again, am reserving my analysis that I'm going to share with the audience with respect to the Electoral College. Because if Joe Biden does fall in that bucket of that image that the Trump campaign is attempting to create, then it could be all bets are off. Trump's going to win again. And make no mistake about it, Trump can still win despite everything that's going on. This is still a race that is up for grabs. So, main performance with Joe Biden this evening, a few talking points, a few policy issues that I'd like to discuss. One is that of taxes, other is health care, and then energy. So this town hall, it was an outdoor event. It was a drive-in type style event. Think of that what you will. I don't care. In the state of Pennsylvania, Scranton, Pennsylvania, where Joe Biden grew up. And obviously in the state of Pennsylvania, the shale revolution is very important. A lot of jobs, a lot of industry, all of the supply chain. There's a lot of stuff taking place in the state of Pennsylvania, which is also where I'm from. So this is sort of straddling the line for Joe Biden, because one part of his party, the really far left wing, is all about just getting rid of fossil fuels. Now, that is completely ridiculous, because it's just not going to happen, because that's what this global economy runs on, is fossil fuels. You cannot flip a switch no matter how much we might want to for cleaner sources of energy. It's just not going to happen, okay? So Joe Biden has to deal with that faction of his party, but he also has to understand the political implications if he were to take such a hardline stance and be against natural gas, oil, fracking, and all those other types of technologies. So, of course, that was a question front and center. Are you going to ban fracking? And Joe Biden said, no, I am not going to ban fracking. Now, that's what he says. If he becomes president, we'll see what type of policies he puts forward. But nonetheless, that is the smarter answer to say. What was also smarter of him to say, which I also believe to be true, is that you have to use natural gas as a stepping stone. That is your transition fuel, your transition form of energy that can bridge that divide, that will produce fewer emissions. It is cleaner than coal and some other sources of energy. It's readily available and highly abundant in this country. A lot of good paying jobs, directly and indirectly. So you can't be against it. You just can't. And also, energy in and of itself is a national security issue. Because if you're going to be beholden to other countries around the world, well, then they got you, don't they, if they want to. So energy independence is a fantastic thing, and we have it, and it needs to be maintained. I mean, we're becoming net exporters of energy. That is a good thing. So Biden was wise. He can still say, yes, I have my own plan. It's not the Green Deal. I have my own plan. I don't need the Green Deal. I have my own plan. We're going to use natural gas as that transition stepping fuel to incorporate a broader portfolio that includes cleaner energy sources. And I'm all for cleaner energy sources if they're economical and if they're efficient. That takes time. It's not going to happen at the drop of a hat, as many of us would want. Everybody wants cleaner water, cleaner air. That's not an argument. The argument becomes, what's the economics behind it? Does it make sense? Is it going to give us the great bang for the buck? And if it is, then you go forward with it. If it isn't, then you wait until those technologies catch up. You wait till those production methods catch up until you start incorporating them. You just can't speed up that process as much as we might want to. You have to be realistic. Okay? So that was Joe Biden with fracking. Not going to ban it, so he says. Good paying jobs. It's a transition fuel, that being natural gas, to get to cleaner sources of energy. All right. Now, obviously, healthcare. Being a part of the Obama administration, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, this, that, and the other. This was obviously a hot topic for the president earlier in the week as well. Being asked about, in particular, pre-existing conditions, and are you going to try to get away with it? And of course, he is in court now, which is basically trying to dismantle pre-existing conditions. Now, the president says, sort of straddles the line of saying that's not true, and he's sort of creating this argument that it's not really true because as soon as that happens and that gets shot down, which is what he wants, I have my plan already waiting in the wings and it's going to be implemented, at the drop of a hat, which is not going to happen because it's going to take an act of Congress to do that. He cannot do this via executive order. Okay, Congress still has legislative powers. That's how it works. And today is Constitution Day, so I would hope everybody understands this. Cannot do it by executive order. And of course, to all of my conservative Republican friends out there who are, ecstatic that the president is in office and appointing all of these conservative judges to the bench, I hope you also understand that the president does not have the authority via executive order to do this, so you can't have it both ways, okay? You want the strict constitutionalists on the bench, that's fine and dandy, but then you cannot have a rogue president using the power of the pen to implement broad sweeping legislation. It does not work like that, okay? So we have yet to see this plan. This was something that George Stephanopoulos pressed him on because there was an interview between those two earlier in the year where he told George that, hey, I have a healthcare plan. You're going to see it in a few weeks. Of course, that was, months and months and months ago. Of course, the president's been busy with some other things, but nonetheless, you delegate responsibility. There's still nothing. He was told it was going to be something else that was going to be put out. Still nothing. Now you have the press conference with the press secretary being asked questions. Where is it? Who's writing it? No answers. No answers, really. Something's being worked on. Where is it? So if you're starting to pick up on a pattern of issues that the president was making promises on, a lot of these things are starting to come out, right? Not in full, but just, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. There's going to be an executive order for this, an executive order for that. We're working on this, we're working on that. It's all coming out before the election. What timing, isn't it? Again, you got to put your skeptical and cynical hat on and say, why now? You had 3.5 years. Why is all this stuff coming out now? Again, he is selling the sizzle, not the steak. He is very good at that. And it could prove very effective, and it could very well prove so effective that he wins re-election. But time will tell this out. But that's just something to pay attention to. So you have healthcare. It's going to be front and center in some of these debates, I would imagine, because it's something that's very personal. It consumes, 17% of the country's GDP, which is just astronomical. And a lot of this is because we have government that runs it to begin with, so you're going to end up with higher costs and poorer quality. That's right off the bat. And secondarily, and maybe just as bad, if not even worse, is the fact that we, as a population, are not a very healthy bunch. The obesity epidemic, in all of its, with all of its tentacles, it reaches out with all of the other problems that it creates in the health field, economically speaking, socially speaking, everything. The cost just becomes staggering due to behavioral choices. Stop drinking as much soda, as much pop, exercise, all these types of things. People that have diabetes, they need not have diabetes, all of them. Change your behavior. You are what you eat to a large degree. Those differences, those behavioral changes, would do wonders for getting the costs down immediately. But it's going to take, I guess, a lot of willpower for people to change their habits. So again, my point on this when it comes to healthcare, and I've stated this many times before, and I'm going to continue to say it, government has no business getting involved in healthcare, especially to the degree in which they are involved. Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, everything else they want to do, all of the insurance regulations. It's out of control. And as I always state here, if you're a Democrat, perfectly fine to be a Democrat. They have their plan. They should get into power. They passed their plan. There it is. Well, do you think the Democrats are always going to be in power? And the answer, of course, is no. So the Republicans, you're a Republican. Perfectly fine if you're a Republican. You guys come to power. You have ideas. You don't like the Democrats' plan and what they've enacted, so you're going to change it. Now, if you're the Republican, you're like, all right, it's about time. That's what I agree with. Here's the problem. Are the Republicans always going to be in power? No. So then the Democrats come back, and now they're going to change it. Why? Why would you want the government to be involved with something that is so personal and treat it like a political football? Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Why do you want to be the monkey in the middle? Why? It makes no sense to me on either side of this equation. If you're the Democrat or you're the Republican. It's just a matter, for them, it's about the power. For the party, for the politicians, it's about the power and control they have over healthcare. For the actual Democrats and Republicans amongst the general population, it's just about your team winning. That's all that is. And again, we got $27 trillion in debt. You think that's by accident? This is the back and forth of this corrupt and fraudulent two-party system that is tearing us apart. You have to get the government out of it. People have serious concerns about pre-existing conditions because, insurance company can turn me down. If you had a true free market, an entrepreneur would solve this problem. I'm not claiming to have the solutions to all these problems, and government should not claim to have solutions to all these problems either. But there are people who devote their life to certain fields, to certain industries, and they can think outside the box. And if they were given the opportunity to do so and to start a company, all of these problems would be solved because there would be a market for them, for their services, for their ideas to come to fruition in the form of a company that can benefit everybody. But when the government wants to create a monopoly, well, they're it. They're the end-all be-all. You have to comply with what we say. This is what we want. That's what you got to do. And if you don't do it, we're going to tax you. We're going to fine you. We can throw you in jail. In a free market system, that's not going to work, because you still have that type. You still have a little bit of a hybrid. You still have that, right? Because look, for example, Walmart. Okay? They are not the government. As closely related as they might be to the government with lobbying efforts and this, that, and the other, let's put that aside. They are a private company. That is to say, they are not government-owned. Walmart cannot force you to shop in their store. They can't even make you come to the parking lot. They have to convince you to come into the store with better products, better prices, better service, what have you. They can't fine you. They can't tax you. They can't throw you in jail. You don't like Walmart? Go to the mom and pop shop next door. Go to Target. Go to whatever other store you want to go to. That's how the free market works. That's how it would work with healthcare as well. But the government notices, oh my goodness, this is such a huge piece of the U.S. economy. We just got to have it. They're salivating. We just got to have it. We have to have this control. We have to have this power. And it creates so much unneeded anxiety and stress and concern on the general population, because so many people, unfortunately, have serious health concerns, or they might have them, or they have children and they're concerned that they might get sick or injured, and what are they going to do? And it's constant back and forth. Oh, it's got to be the Democrats. Oh, it's got to be the Republicans. How about screw them both? How about allow the entrepreneur to step up to the plate and solve the problem? They will, because that's what entrepreneurs do. And this is supposed to be the United States of America that believes in our Constitution. Again, it is Constitution Day, and we are supposed to believe in free market capitalism. This is not hard to grasp. Why people don't understand it? Again, it's because we have a two-party system that only gives you the talking points from both sides. Coke or Pepsi? Well, that's all I got. There's no root beer. There's no orange soda. There's no 7-Up. There's nothing else. There's no iced tea. Just Coke and Pepsi. That's all you got. And you're paying for it. So healthcare, to me, is a losing battle when these politicians start moving their lips. Get them the hell away from it. It's too personal, and entrepreneurs can and will solve it. You got to get the government out of the way. When it comes to taxation, the president and his campaign are pushing hard that Joe Biden is going to increase taxes. Joe Biden is going to push back and say, no, I'm only going to increase taxes on those making some $400,000 or more a year. Everybody else is fine. This is all BS from both of them. Everybody's taxes are going up in some form, shape, because of all of the spending that is going on in this country, in this banana republic. It's just simple math, okay? There was a survey out. I'm going to have to find it because I'd rather have it in front of me to tell you this, but I'm just going to give you the headline of it. Executive CEOs were being surveyed on this question about future taxation. Well, the majority of them are saying it doesn't matter who's in the White House, taxes are going up. You know why? Because they understand math. Okay? They might be scumbags, some of them, financially engineering their company stock so they can enrich themselves, yada, yada, yada. But you know what? They still know math, because you got to know math to know how to financial engineer. And they know with all these debts and deficits that, yeah, taxes are going to have to go up because you're going to have to pay for this somehow. And it's either going to be through direct taxation or it's going to be through inflation. And lucky for all of us, it's going to be both. Now, you can say Thunder Thumbs gets reelected and it's a red wave and the Republicans take over both houses of Congress and they somehow pass more tax cuts. That's fine. Are they going to cut spending? Probably not. So, and you're not going to wipe out all of those debts and deficits with tax cuts. Ain't going to happen. The numbers are too big. This is basic math. Okay? If the Republicans go down this lane and make that argument, then they are just as incompetent and stupid with mathematics as are the Democrats. Okay? So, you're going to pay higher taxes You're going to pay the inflation tax, which is the most devastating and destructive form of taxation that there is, because it steals, it robs your purchasing power, and nothing whatsoever has been produced in the meantime. Just digits on a central banker's computer screen. That's it. That's it. Again, at least with direct taxation, something needed to be produced. Something had to happen in the economy in order for the government to tax it. Inflation is just money printing. And then we're all going to suffer those severe consequences. Higher costs, lower standards of living, which of course go hand in hand. Okay? So that's going to be devastating. And again, even if the Republicans, if it's a red wave, red sweep, whatever you want to call it, what do you think is going to happen at the state level? You think your taxes are going to go down at the state level? They're all broke. Where do you think they're going to get the money? The states don't have a banana republic printing press. They got to go to the federal government. So they're coming after you. Your taxes are going up. They're going to go up, and they're most likely going to go up at the federal level. They're going to go up at the state level. They're going to go up at the local level. And you're going to have to pay the inflation tax as well. Free was never so expensive, ladies and gentlemen. Check out that podcast from several months ago, please. Still highly relevant, was telling you what was going to happen. Free was never so expensive. All right? And the whole host of them. Go back and listen to all of them. Learn something. See how I did with saying what was going to be coming down the pike. So that's your taxes. They're going up. Directly, federal, state, local, inflation. My spiel on healthcare and then energy. All right, so that's Joe Biden. We'll see what happens. Now it's obviously Thursday. We're going to do our typical data release. Now we have initial jobless claims for the week ending September 12th, coming in at 860,000 above market expectations. The prior week of September 5th was revised upward by 9,000, now coming in at 893,000. For continuing claims for the week ending September 5th, the most recent, because it lags, is at 12.6 million. When we look at everything combined, regular state, federal employees, newly discharged veterans, pandemic unemployment assistance, pandemic emergency UC, unemployment compensation, extended benefits, state additional benefits, and work share, grand total, 29,768,326 individuals. This is obviously a lag of a couple weeks for the grand total. Week ending August 29th. Again, 29.7, round up to 29.8 million Americans collecting some form of unemployment insurance benefit. This is an increase from the prior week of 98,456 individuals. Okay? The bulk of this week-over-week change came from regular state, okay, which is interesting to see because we have been seeing a downtrend on this. So this is interesting to see an increase of over 215,000 individuals. Again, this is at the regular state level. When we're looking at the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, which was a creation of the Nobody Cares Act, this was a week-over-week decrease of 189,000 individuals. So obviously that's something you want to see, fewer people collecting unemployment, meaning they're hopefully getting some form of employment. But then you have the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, which is another creation of the Nobody Cares Act, and we see an increase week-over-week of about 105,000 individuals. So what's interesting to see here, even though there's a couple weeks lag, is it's still at 29.7, 29.8 individuals. That is going in the wrong direction. That would take us up to about 18 percentage points as an unemployment rate, not this BS 8.4% figure that they want to give us. Now, what's also interesting, again, going back to the regular state figure, which was an increase of nearly 216,000 week over week, again, week ending August 29th, is this the sign? Is this the start? Is this the start of that next round, that next wave of layoffs? Is that what we're starting to witness? Are these more so the white collar workers those office jobs now that are starting to be laid off. They're starting to get laid off because you have a lot of these moratoriums, some of them expiring. You have a lot of the programs within the Nobody Cares Act starting to expire, or the funds within them, such as the PPP loans, are starting to be exhausted. And we already know through various surveys that most of them have been exhausted at the beginning of August. So it would make sense that they are going to get whatever's left is going to obviously continue to be depleted little by little as we progress through time. So this is something that we have to continue to monitor very closely, because the Nobody Cares Act, the alphabet soup of emergency facilities that has been created with the Federal Reserve, there are so many distortions out there, it makes it very difficult to get a true picture of the jobs market. But when we start to see these unfortunate trends where the grand total has been increasing and significantly over the past couple of weeks, that's not good. And now when you see regular state increasing by some 216,000, that's also not good. And is that indicative of white-collar workers starting to be laid off? Because typically in a recession, you start to shed your lower-paid jobs first. And with this pandemic-induced pricking of this bubble causing the Great Depression, or really, I shouldn't say causing the Great Depression, but pricking the bubble, it's already building up to be the greatest depression to begin with, having such a devastating effect on the travel industry, well, that's a lot of low-paying jobs, okay? And that's a nice little segue into the airline industry, because they're back in Washington, D.C. They want more bailout money, which we've been talking about here for the past couple of weeks. Basically, I don't know if it seems like the airline industry is attempting to extort Uncle Sam for more money by sort of threatening and dangling tens of thousands of jobs out there. If you don't give us more money, we got to let these people go. So, you know, there's some rumors out there that they're going to get another bailout, that it's possible that they're going to end up with another bailout. We already gave them billions. But the number that's circulating out there now is another $25 billion. This is not chump change. $25 billion. The airline industry claims that if they pretty much don't get this assistance, this bailout, that some 30 to 50,000 jobs will be lost almost immediately. Okay, $25 billion divided by 50,000 equals $500,000 a job. Wow, wonder where all that money's going. Wonder if the executives are getting a little antsy. Maybe it's all in their pockets. Is that where all that money is going to end up? $25 billion divided by 50,000 gives you $500,000 per job. I know airline pilots can make good money, but $500,000? I don't think so. What happens if it was 30,000 jobs? $25 billion divided by 30,000. Well, now you're at $833,000 a job. Where's all this money going? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? And don't forget, the airline industry was notoriously known for share buybacks over the past decade, taking advantage of record low interest rates, which of course we are back at record low interest rates, so they could financially engineer their stock with stock buybacks, increasing their share price and thus increasing executive compensation. They do not have cash on the balance sheet for a rainy day. The rainy day comes, and then they have to go crying to mommy and daddy government for a bailout. And they get it. And they get it because Thunder Thumb says, well, it was no fault of their own. But now money is being at least somewhat held up, I guess, for the states. The states can't get it, and again, it's those blue states that the president calls out. I hope he understands that he is the president of the United States of America, not the blue states, not the red states, but the United States of America. That really pissed me off yesterday in his press conference. And I'm just going to say this. If I was on the fence and maybe leaning towards Trump, which of course I'm not, but let's just say hypothetically, if I was somewhat on the fence, that would have pushed me off it. I would have been totally against it for what he said yesterday in regards to the death numbers, the death toll, with respect to COVID-19, and saying our numbers would be maybe the best, some of the best in the world if it wasn't for the blue states. That was just beyond pathetic. That was just further indication to me that this guy just does not get it. He cannot rise to the occasion. He clearly doesn't understand what's going on, or if he does, he doesn't care, which is just as bad, if not worse. So that really pushed me over the edge. I was not happy about that at all. And I talked about that later in the podcast yesterday. So some of you, if you weren't sticking around, might not have heard it. And I'm talking about it again, sort of late in this one as well. But nonetheless, that was just completely unpresidential, unneeded, just every box you can possibly check. That just lack of leadership, lack of empathy. He checked them all right with that statement. That was just ridiculous, completely unpresidential. So the bailouts might come. And again, Thunder Thumbs tweeted out yesterday, as we stated during yesterday's podcast, basically telling the Republicans, what the hell, go ahead and pass another round of spending and go for the big one. It doesn't matter. It's all coming back to us anyway. And during the press conference, he reiterated that point and basically had a lot of confidence that he can convince the Republicans to do so. And that's because the Republicans have no spine to stand up to this president. So anybody who wants to claim to be a fiscal conservative and support this stuff, you have no leg to stand on whatsoever. But there you have it. This is what happens when you have a two-party system. You get siloed in. When you combine it with our discussion on social media earlier this week, it just pushes you further and further apart. It's being exploited by both parties. And this is why nothing is getting done. This is why the country is at each other's throats. This is why family members and friends can't even talk to each other if they're on the other side of the political aisle. That's why you have to vote third party. That's why you have to give Jo Jorgensen, the presidential candidate from the Libertarian Party, a chance. She is on all 50 ballots. When you see your ballot, you are going to see her name on it, and most people aren't even going to know about it, who she is, what she stands for, and that's a true shame. But that is indicative of the system in which we live. Further evidence that this is unsustainable and that this is nowhere near what our founding fathers wanted for us. And such a shame it is on this Constitution Day. But there you have it. That was the Town Hall Showdown, Trump versus Biden, Part 2. Up next will be the main event, debate number 1, on September 29th. Buckle up. It'll be interesting. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.